What up? Sunset had the idea for us to either play the new Disciple of Varashta Ascendancy or a Minion build, and ultimately we decided, why not both? And wow, did this thing obliterate the campaign. It finished at level 60, still wearing gear from Acts 1 and 3, and bosses were just falling over dead. It's also super easy to play and really fun as well. Minions are kind of awesome. Who knew? So let's talk about how to turn the campaign into a skeleton disco. Before we jump into it, help us out with that YouTube busy work, like, subscribe, and hype the video if you're on mobile. These all tell YouTube to show our content to more people, which helps us keep doing this. Let's talk about how skeletal minions work in Path of Exile 2, because they're a little weird. There are 8 different types of skeletal minions in the game, and they provide a mix of tanks, melee DPS, ranged DPS, and casters. You've got all the classic RPG roles covered. Each minion you summon requires spirit, and you're able to control exactly how many you want of each minion. Because of this, spirit is one of the most valuable offensive stats you can get as a minion build. Increase to minion gem levels is the most valuable stat you can get on a minion build, and here's why. As you increase the gem levels on minions, their damage and tankiness goes up, they get stronger, but their reservation cost goes down, so you're effectively double dipping. You get stronger minions, but they cost less, so you get more of them too. Skeletal minions will passively hang out with you and fight enemies, but they all have active skills as well. You can use them to deal damage or provide crowd control. That's mostly it. They all function a little differently, but they basically all boil down to do damage or CC enemies. They're all pretty good at dealing damage and tanking for you as well. The only exceptions to these rules are the skeleton warriors that come from rattling scepters and skeleton clerics. All they know how to do is tank and heal. They don't have any extra abilities, and that's okay. So why would anyone ever run 8 different types of skeletons? Who wants to keybind that many skills? Absolutely not us, but the support gem Muster grants 7% more damage for every single type of reviving minion you have active. By running 8 different types of skeletons and potentially a Spectre as well, you can get 63% more damage for every skill you support with Muster. And because Muster can be used on all minion skills, you're going to use it everywhere. Getting a 63% more damage multiplier for an entire build is insane. Alright, now let's talk a little bit about the campaign bonuses we took for the build and how it caused a bit of a shift in our entire thought process. So about half the campaign bonuses are swappable. You could swap them as needed, it's not a huge deal. But the rewards in Acts 3 and 4 are permanent, they're locked in. You could choose between Stun Threshold, Elemental Ailment Threshold, and Mana Regen in Act 3. We usually just take Stun Threshold so as to not get stun locked to death. That's the right call as a melee build or anything with hybrid defenses, but as a pure energy shield build, Ailment Threshold may actually be better because Ignite is just so bad for energy shield builds. In Act 4, you have the choice between +5 to all elemental resistances and +5 to all attributes. Elemental resistances are usually the better choice in the moment for being tanky, but attributes are more expensive in terms of in-game gear budget. At least for minion builds, they are really hungry for attributes due to using so many support gems. So you should probably take +5 to all stats on any character you plan to play a lot. You definitely should on this build. Unfortunately, we didn't. We've just been taking +5 all res every time and kind of defaulted to that again. It's not the end of the world or worth re-rolling over, just a little mistake that you probably shouldn't make when you get to Act 4. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the skills that we used while running through the campaign. The very first skill that you use, like the stuff you actually use to kill the miller, is going to just be sorceress stuff because this is a sorceress character and you're not going to have the option of not using sorceress skills to get through that. But once you get into town and you get going in Act 1, you're going to start out by switching over to the occult tab. This is something you're going to have to do every time you make a new skill gem. Unfortunately, switch over to the occult tab to make the skills that are in that tab because we're using all skills in that tab for the whole campaign. So the first 2 skills that we make are Unearth and Skeletal Sniper. You're going to summon as many Skeletal Snipers as you can. You're also going to want to buy a Rattling Scepter like this. And a Rattling Scepter is special among all the different types of scepters because they give you the skill Skeletal Warrior Minion. This isn't absolutely mandatory, but it's pretty hard for a minion build to not just want to run this. You know, it's an extra minion type of guy. They do tank for you. They do okay damage at the very start of the campaign. All of the other different types of scepters just give buffs, and yeah, Rattling Scepters pretty much are just the best for the campaign. Also, the first 2 Skeletal Warrior minions are free. So Unearth is a skill that you can use for the first act and maybe like the first half of Act 2 before it kind of starts to fall off, and what it does is a little bit of damage, and mostly when it kills an enemy or hits a corpse, it will summon a little bone construct. They're just very short-lived little wimpy minions that just kind of run around and tank for you and do a little bit of damage, and mostly just keep stuff off of you and off of your more damaging minions like the skeletal snipers, and you're basically just going to want to make as many skeletal snipers as you can afford for the early phase of the campaign. Once you get toward kind of the back end of Act 1, you'll be able to start summoning skeletal infernalists instead. There's kind of a mixed opinion on whether infernalists or snipers are better. Snipers have better on-sheet single target damage. Infernalists felt like they were doing more damage though. You can cause them to shotgun by giving them multi-shot, and you know, they both do okay damage. There really isn't like a huge difference between all of the minions that you're able to get in Act 1 in terms of their actual damage output through all of Act 1. You just kind of want as many guys as you can afford. Where the build really starts to take off is once you get into Act 2 and you're able to ascend for the first time. You're able to pick up one of two options very quickly, either Kalari the Tainted Sands or Razan the Blazing Sword. Having played around with these guys a bunch, they both are pretty good offensive options. The third option that you get out of being a Disciple of Varashta, Navira the Last Mirage, is all defensive, so none of these are really going to be very useful skills. But each of these guys comes with a baseline skill and then offers you 3 skills, and there's no small passive along the way, so you're able to get 2 active skills at the very first ascension and then 2 more at your second ascension. Having played around with everything that they had to offer, Kalari does seem like the better of the two right off the bat in Act 2, and then in Act 3 you could take Razan. And just to kind of run through the skills that you get from these guys, Kalari's basic skill is one of the skills that you see from Balbala. You throw down a little coin, and then a bunch of daggers rise up out of the ground and hit enemies in the area. It does an okay amount of damage. It's very useful on bosses. The main value that it provides is it puts a ton of critical weakness debuffs on enemies, massively increasing the flat critical chance on them. So your minions, which you're able to scale minion crit chance up very high very quickly. Like, just to look at this, I think they were something in the range of like 30% crit chance on these skills. And that's before critical weakness comes into play, where it's adding like 10% flat crit chance onto monsters. Completely insane. The real moneymaker, though, out of Kalari is this skill, Kalari's Deception. What this does is it blasts a little circle on the ground. It's just very simple. It costs very little mana, and it just does a little circle of damage on the ground. That little circle is a massive amount of damage, and if you could see very quickly, it summons a little clone of Kalari here, only for like a half a second. But it comes with 3 charges, so the way that you use it is, if you cast it again, it will explode a second time if the clone hasn't despawned yet. So the way that you want to use this when you're fighting a boss or a rare is bang, 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 and you'll see you'll get a bunch of like repeated explosions on the same area, effectively doubling or potentially tripling your damage if you're able to just get these casts out very quickly. And that is how this build is able to do such absolutely insane damage on these bosses. You have all these minions that are hanging around, blasting the boss, just kind of passively doing damage, and doing the same thing while you're walking through areas very quickly. But really, when you want to blast a boss, you just throw down a double tap of the, like, I don't know, Rising Daggers, Kalari's Brutality. You double tap those down on a boss, and then you just triple tap them with Kalari's Deception, just blasting in that area. It does a bunch of physical damage, so it'll build up stun and stun the boss very quickly. Your minions will be chopping them and stunning them as well, and then you're just going to be nuking them like to an insane degree. Once you get into Act 3 and you unlock Razan, that's where you're able to get a little bit more combo going, and so you kind of have a couple of options of skills for Razan, but the trap definitely seemed to be the best of the 3. Razan's Reckoning is just kind of like a cool looking flaming circle. I could talk to Doriani and spec into it to show it off, but it does have a longer cooldown of the two, and it has a smaller area, but we could just show off like how cool it looks. It summons Razan, he does a big explosion up out of the ground, and then he swirls and lands and does another explosion. Cool looking. And a lot of the times when you cast the Jinn skills, there will be like some sort of voice line too, which is fun. They really did a good job with all the aesthetics of this. But the trap, by comparison, it throws down traps, so they're not going to trigger here in the hideout, but, you know, I'll definitely make sure that there's been some footage of them so far. It throws out this massive web of traps, and if enemies step into them, they'll turn into flaming tornadoes, and you're able to precast these before a boss comes out. Then, like, right as the boss comes out, double tap them with Kalari's Brutality, hit him with another trap set, and then triple tap them with Kalari's Deception, and that's pretty much going to kill bosses during the campaign. As you're just kind of cruising through areas, you can kind of alternate between throwing down the traps or doing the Deception just to kill random packs that are in the way, and then just let your minions kill everything else as you're going along. And that was ultimately like how this character zipped through the campaign so quickly. It basically just walked from the start of every area to the end of every area, like without considering a lot of the monsters along the way. There were only like a couple of times, I think, where it got hemmed in and actually like got killed, but for the most part it was just like walking through and then just like letting these two skills take care of everything and the minions clean up all the rest, and that was pretty much it. And to a shocking degree, that's basically all we're using skill-wise. So Razan does have another skill, Razan's Brand, that's his baseline skill. He also has like a passive where if you use other skills, non-minion skills, like if you were to use Upheaval, he'll show up and do like a little circle swipe, like a cool looking fire damage blaze thing. It doesn't really do a lot of damage, but I can make an unearth. I think it'll actually work in the hideout, so just to show off how that looks. Cool, right? Didn't really do a ton of damage, but it does look neat. It's on a 4-second cooldown, so not a big deal, but something that you can maybe use while you're still in the campaign, maybe. Although by the time you're in Act 3, you're probably going to have completely phased out Unearth, because by that point it is actually kind of mana hungry if you're continuing to level it up, and it's not going to do nearly as much damage as any of the Kalari or Razan skills. So Razan's Brand is just a very simple skill. Like, you put it on an enemy, after a handful of seconds pass, it'll explode and do an AoE damage. If you throw it on an enemy and kill them, it'll do that AoE damage as soon as they die, so it is sort of a possible 1-2 combo where you can throw the Brand on an enemy and then pop them with Deception. That hasn't felt necessary at all. Pretty much his character's just needed to, like, at most, Razan's Trap and then Kalari's Deception as it's running through areas, and that's kind of it. And that's been the same in the handful of, like, 2 or 3 maps that we've done at in-game here as well. This character surprisingly was able to kill a like +4 level map boss, you know, like fully maxed out map boss tree without much difficulty, like a powerful map boss with all the points in, and then once taking all those out and doing just like a regular map boss, it just fell over instantly. So again, this character seems like, even though it's in leveling gear and not even like level 65 or anything, it's still clobbering maps as easily as it was the campaign. Now, as for the rest of the skeletons, really what we're going for here is just like one of each of them, because they do work with muster, and you can put muster on Razan and Kalari. That's why they're doing so much damage. We have 8 different types of skeletons at the moment, so these guys are doing 56% more damage or something like that. You know, pretty insane increased damage. You can also put hulking minions on them, and that'll give them 20% more damage, and it has no downside because normally it has that increased reservation multiplier, but they don't reserve anything. They just scale with minion damage, and that's it. They just scale with minion damage, and then they don't have any sort of downsides like having a reservation or having a life pool or being able to die or anything. Now, as for which minions you should emphasize during the campaign, honestly, just fill out whatever uses the most of your spirit and really don't worry about it that much. Like, arsonists were kind of cool during the first couple hours of the campaign or so, but then after that, you can go with as many snipers as you want. They just have an easier time hitting stuff. They're ranged and they do physical damage. Ultimately, it didn't really seem to matter. Having played around with a bunch of different types of configurations, everything pretty much died regardless of what minions were like here doing stuff. The real end goal is just to have as many different types as possible to juice up your 2 types of quote-unquote minions that come from being a disciple of Varashta. All right, with that all being said, now let's take a look at the passive tree. And so because this is a sorceress, you might be tempted to like come out and take some spell damage stuff and juice up your spell damage. Don't bother. Just go defense. Just go full defense from the very start. That worked really well. Just going full defense and just counting on the minions to do damage early. That worked really, really well. And then the goal was to come up here and take like some of these bonuses that make the minions tankier and give them more damage and move speed and stuff. That was like the plan. Also, taking Mana Blessing, just something to help with fixing mana early, was kind of nice. Like, you could maybe take Open Mind too if you wanted to just make sure that mana is like really, really trivial. That wouldn't be a bad thing. But this setup did make the guild feel very tanky. Like, I think during the campaign it died maybe like 6 or so times, so I was basically just like face tanking my way through areas, so it was like pretty good. There were only a couple of hairy spots, and again, this character was very underleveled. So as you're progressing on, you're going to want to come over and try to get at your command. This set of bonuses over here is really a big part of why the Disciple of Varashta minions hit so hard, because the skills that you use to summon them, the Kalari's Deception and Brutality, these do count as command skills, and at your command makes it so that they do increase damage with command skills for each different type of persistent minion in your presence, which also works the same way as muster, basically, but it's an increased multiplier instead of a more multiplier, so you're just stacking all different kinds of multipliers there. And then getting some of these bonuses like Grip of Evil, the increased crit chance, synergizes really well with all that crit bonus we're getting, or crit chance we're getting out of Kalari, and getting 10% of physical as extra chaos is also good, since Kalari is doing most of our damage and it's all physical. Then we're doing the same, we're taking a bunch of bonuses over here, and just getting cooldown recovery rate with command skills for minions is awesome. This is really valuable for reducing the cooldown, but it's important to point out that cooldown recovery rate for yourself, like if you just get 12% cooldown out of, say, the intermission or whatever, that's not actually going to affect your minion cooldowns at all. So right now, it's like 2.63 seconds on the Kalari's Brutality cooldown, and the same on the Kalari's Deception. 2.5 seconds, that's pretty good. But any cooldown on this character wouldn't apply to that at all. It would need to be cooldown for minion skills. Minion scaling is so weird in this game, but it's kind of interesting. It does make it a little bit easier to figure out how you would want to set up a tree, because you just type in minion and then you kind of go after that for the most part. And then we have some really good minion bonuses as well in this kind of Act 4 and beyond section. Lord of Horror, it makes it so that your reservation efficiency is increased. It's a lot easier to have a bunch of minions. More minions, you get more for the spirit that you have. You get withered on hit and a lot of damage on area out of this whole section here. And then you can get more scaling out of Necrotic Touch. And then we start building toward just having a bunch more energy shield. One really nice thing about being the Disciple of Varashta, just to kind of touch on that, since we've already talked about the main parts of the Ascendancy being the Kalari and Razan setups, but the other two notables here that are really, really good are the fourth teaching, which gives you -1 second of base energy shield recharge delay, and also more recharge rate when you're low on energy shield. This is just perfectly set up for being a Chaos Inoculation build. And Sacred Rituals gives you 60% of your current energy shield added to armor for determining physical DR. So this isn't going to be an enormous amount of armor, obviously. The character's gear that I'm showing right now is the gear I think I had equipped at the very end of the campaign. So it's very, very, very bad. However, if you're running 10,000 energy shield or something and you take a hit, that basically means you have 6k armor, which isn't a crazy amount, but it's very strong defensively to be able to purely stack energy shield and still get a significant amount of Fizz DR out of that. Also, the small passives on the way here, 20% increased max energy shield, are just great. Without -1 second of base energy shield, recharge delay sets the base from 4 down to 3 just by default. And so these bonuses like Dependable Ward, which is great, and Rapid Recharge, which is also great, work really, really well. If you can get any jewels in the passive tree to help with faster start of energy shield recharge, you can get it really, really low. This character's gear is garbage, and it has less than 1.25 on the energy shield recharge start. And so that's pretty much the passive tree for the character at this point for getting through the campaign and getting pushed into endgame. Now let's talk a little bit about gear in the campaign. So there are a couple of uniques that are pretty useful. The most important one by far is Enfolding Dawn. It gives you 100 spirit and it gives you up to 15 all res. That's literally all it does, and that's literally all it needs to. You can start equipping this at level 1, and you don't have to have it equipped the whole rest of the way. I could have dropped this at some point in Act 3 or 4 or whatever, but I just never felt like doing it, so it just stayed on the whole time, and it was fine. As for two other really useful uniques that I don't have equipped currently, one of them would be the Everlasting Gaze. This is just something you can throw onto any character at level 2, and just use it for all of Act 1, and it'll trivialize mana on any character. It's not super useful other than that, but it's nice to not have to hit your mana flask. Then for boots, Luminous Pace are always good from the start of the campaign. They just are some easy move speed boots. And then once you get to level 11, Wanderlust are going to be the best move speed boots for a long, long time. I don't remember what the minimum item level is to get 20% increased move speed on boots, but it's pretty high. It's something like Act 3 is the first time you're able to find rare boots that would have 20% move speed. But these are obviously available in Act 1, you know, not even really the end of Act 1. Like, you can get these before fighting the Executioner, so you can move a little bit faster and be slow immune, and that's kind of nice. Obviously, you shouldn't be using these to the end of the campaign. I just forgot. So I did. It was fine. I never found any 20% move speed boots with energy shield on them, or I would have swapped. Not a big deal. And that's pretty much it for the, like, uniques. Then the stuff that you're really looking for throughout the campaign is you are looking for rattling scepters that have increased spirit and plus level of minion skills. Those are your most important stats by far. Then anything that can add, like, added attack damage to allies in your presence, physical especially, or increased attack damage for allies in your presence, like this scepter. This is one that popped up, I think, either the end of Act 2 or the very start of Act 3, and this was good enough to keep running for the whole campaign. This amulet was one that was on a vendor in Act 1. It just had +1 level of minion skills, and I was like, I'll take it. Thank you. That cost almost nothing, and never found another plus level of minion skills amulet for the whole rest of the campaign run. Didn't really look that far, but yeah. Then the only other spot where you can get plus level of minion skills would be helm. So those are really the 3 spots. You're looking for rattling scepters, amulets, and helms with plus level of minion skills. If you find non-rattling scepters, you know, discipline scepter or whatever, maybe they're worth using, maybe they're not. You're gonna have to kind of figure that out. Ultimately, you probably are better just sticking with a rattling scepter, just to have more minions, more tanks for you. The warriors are useful even if they're not that strong. They do at least, like, add to the minion counter, right? So that's very important to have that going on. But other than that, you're just trying to get as much level of minion skills, as much spirit as possible, and then try to be tanky with the rest of your jewelry. Now, in terms of in-game uniques, we don't have a ton on the list here. The only thing that we really looked at and said, like, that seems pretty good, especially if you're going Chaos Inoculation, would be Ever-Grasping Ring. You want to fit in one of these, ideally, maybe 2. 24% of damage is extra Chaos. That applies to fire, cold, lightning, and physical, so that's a ton of extra damage. You can scale that up with Chaos Catalyst as well to get that up into the 30 range, and then enemies gaining damage as extra Chaos. Sounds bad unless you're Chaos Inoculation and you're completely immune, and then it doesn't matter. So this is something you could slap on for more damage. Didn't feel like we needed it on this character, and it does eat up ring slots, so it may be something that we don't wind up using long-term anyway, but it's definitely something you can do just to boost your damage by a ton. You know, like 30% more damage for all of your team is pretty good, especially with them also applying Wither because of Right Hand of Darkness, so there's some pretty good synergy there. So ultimately, this character was an absolute blast. Like, it destroyed the campaign. It was super fun to play. Kind of fun to get into playing minions, having not really spent a ton of time doing that over the years of PoE. Just doing something different turned out to be an incredibly fun time, and something we would highly recommend. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This was super fun. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us and help us make more PoE content, consider becoming a channel member as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.